This video is on void functions. A void function is just like any other function except for it does not return anything. It returns absolutely nothing. Where in our previous functions that we learned in chapter 4, those functions actually had a return value. For instance, we had our int max and we had two parameters. It took a and b, and this function would actually return the larger of the two variables passed to it. Um, and what that means is that this function actually has a value. I would consider this function an actual integer, which means that I could actually go into my main function and I could actually create a variable. I'll call it m for max, and then we can have a equals 5 and we can have b equals 6. And then I could go and I could say m is equal to the max of a and b, meaning that this function actually returns a value. So this function is actually an integer. A void function, we can't do that. Inside of a void function, we label our return value as void, meaning that this function actually, this function actually returns nothing. So inside my function, basically, this function is going to do something, but it doesn't require any return value, which means that I can't go inside my main function and say m is equal to my function. If you do that, you're going to get a little red squiggly line saying that you can't do this, and that's because this function actually does not have a return value. So let's take a look at a void function. A lot of times we see void functions when we want to output to our console. In this example, I'm going to show a menu. This is a basic menu function. It's going to see out all the different options that a user could select for the function. It does not require any return values. If you notice, I'm not returning anything. Here's also another void function, and this one actually takes a user input. So I just wanted to show this demonstration to show that just because it's a void function, if it doesn't return anything, it does not necessarily mean that it does not accept any parameters. In this case, I am having a parameter called num, and I use a num to determine which value the user selected in the previous menu. So let's take a look at that. Inside my main function, I have a variable called answer. This answer right here is going to take in the user input, whatever the user inputs. Then we will send that answer into our selection, and then we will let our switch see out what the user selected. So I'm going to put this in a do while loop. So it will keep looping this until the user selects 5. And if you can see here, 5 means close the program. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So right now I'm running the menu function. The first thing we see is our menu. I can type in a number such as 1. If I hit return, then it tells me that I chose open a file. And I can keep doing that. If I choose 2, then it says I chose save a file. And I can do that all the way up until I choose 5, which just says I chose to close, and then it stops my program. So if you notice, well, let me go back to here. If you noticed, I do not have a return in my function. That's because the function does not return anything. However, there are times where we would want the function to return if some condition is not met. For example, let's say inside this switch, instead of having it see out close, what if we just wanted to actually just close the program? Because if you notice in my other demonstration, I just had the program, in my other demonstration, I just had it see out that you chose close. But what if I actually just want this to actually return? So let me go ahead and modify this code. If I want the program to just end, if I want the function to just return at this point, then I can just type in the word return. And since it returns nothing, I'm going to return nothing. So I'm just going to say return and then semicolon. And that will make the function return at this point. So those are reasons why we do want to use return, but we do not necessarily have to use return. Sometimes we do want to have a return if there's in the case where we want the program to, we want our function to return earlier. So that is void function.